And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Tuesday, March 25th. I am Josh Engleman here to break down an 8-game slate. We got the same thing on DraftKings and on FanDuel today. So we're breaking down the same info no matter what. And interesting game times as well. We've got 2 7s, 2 7:30s, an 8, a 9, a double 10. Great late swap day once again. Kind of similar to yesterday, which ended up breaking well overall. Hit the like button if you're here. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Good morning, everybody. You guys have any success? Anybody get anything? I see Jake finished top 40 in the 111. That's always good to see. I basically broke even on the nose, just in one of those generic mini maxes yesterday. I think I was up like 5%, maybe something like that. Yeah, 5.3% actual ROI. I basically broke even on the nose. Jordan Hawkins certainly didn't help out for me. I ended up having 84% of Jordan Hawkins. That one didn't help. Alvarado, not ideal for me. DeAndre Jordan, great. Jamal Murray, great. Josh Giddey, great. MPJ, not so great. Alvarado, not so great. Banchero, not so great. Quickly was awesome. Kelly Olynyk was awesome. Jakob Poeltl, I'm very happy about. I hope somebody got that from me. That was one that I was pretty heavy on all day. But yeah, that's where we stand. What's up, y'all? So, made a very slight tweak to the information you see on the screen right now, and I think you guys will like this. So, I separated the visual of the players. You can see this yellow line through the middle. The first 5 guys you see are the expected starting point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center. Then it's just the bench ranked by minutes. So, at least now, you guys, when you're looking at the screen, everything above the yellow line is in positional order. Everything below that is not expected starters ranked by minutes. I think that'll be better for everybody. So, I hope you guys like that change. Now we can very easily see who the expected starters are, what the impact is. You can get our assumptions a little bit earlier. But for now, we got to break down 8 games. We got a lot to talk about. A couple places are, a little bit more difficult to talk about than they normally are, but we're here. We got nothing but time. So let's get it started. And we'll start in Orlando. The Magic are 5-point favorites in Charlotte, 211 total. This is the lowest total on the slate by 6 points. Obviously, not the fastest pace matchup in the world. It's the slowest pace for today. Not expecting Cole Anthony to go. He's been basically missing for the past 6 or 7 games. Did pop back in very briefly. So we're going with the assumption that Corey Joseph's going to get the start. You're certainly not looking at Corey Joseph. You're looking at Paolo Banchero. You're looking at Franz Wagner. Same as yesterday. 9,800 for Paolo. 8,800 for Franz. Franz has the MPE. We have Paolo a bit more optimal than Franz. They're right around their ownership. Paolo ranks 9th. He's 20% owned. He's 20% optimal. Franz ranks 23rd. He's 12% owned. He's 10% optimal. I got 20% of Paolo and 8% of Franz. Both of those guys look great. And then Anthony Black gets a couple extra minutes with no Cole Anthony. Price hasn't really moved all that much. 3,800. It's a 5.8x value in this matchup. 14% optimal, 11% owned. I got to 19. He's ranking in the top 20 right now, and I think that stands out. You can get some shares of a $5,200 Wendell Carter Jr. You're probably not playing anything else, though. I don't know why you would go to Corey Joseph. I don't know why you would go to KCP. Everybody else is ranked well north of 100. As I see this one, it's Paolo, it's Anthony Black, and it's Franz. What do you guys like for Orlando here against Charlotte? Just to touch on it from the FanDuel side, it's the exact same scenario. Heavy ownership to Franz and Paolo. This is a spot where Franz looks a lot better. He's $1,300 cheaper than Paolo. He's 37% owned. Both guys north of 30% optimal. They're both in the top 10. So big time priorities on the Orlando side from Franz and Paolo on FanDuel. Anthony Black as well is getting about 10% ownership. You're really just not playing anybody else for Orlando. You guys like anything here? Other than Franz, Paolo, and Anthony Black? Because I really don't think there's anything else here. Man, that Gatorade's good. Trevor, Franz, yeah, agreed. This one's really cut and dry. Really cut and dry. There's just not all that much to what we have here. So let's go to the Charlotte side. Actually, let's check and see. Do we have any bets? Wow. Not only do we not have any bets, but we really don't have any bets. One lone Draymond Green option and then nothing else. There's nothing here. All ones right now. So until I see another one, it's looking thin so far this morning. By the way, if you guys like OddsShopper and the Portfolio EV tool, we're going to talk about this twice. Let me grab what I know I need, which is this. Why is it not letting me paste? All right. Coming back in via my own tab. You guys are going to like this. I'm positive of it. It's thematic. Actually, we're going to put a pause on that. We're going to wait for 2 games. I realized what I was doing. We're going to wait 2 games. Let's go to Charlotte. So the Charlotte side. Trey says, I tripled my betting bankroll with OddsShopper in a week and a half. Unreal. I think you guys are going to be able to do something the same way Trey does. So we'll get there in a second. Let's talk Charlotte. This is not going to take long. So obviously, Charlotte's in a terrible spot. They lose 4 possessions below their average by facing Orlando. LaMelo Ball is the only guy on DraftKings that got any ownership, and it's 1%. He's the only guy on DraftKings that got any optimal rate. It's 3%. Otherwise, no one else here got any optimal. No one is getting ownership. Josh Okogie is potentially back. He's questionable. I see nothing. I got 1 share of LaMelo and nothing else. I don't want Josh Green. I don't want Daquan Jeffries. I don't want 9K Miles Bridges. I have no interest in an $8,400 Mark Williams. I want nothing from Charlotte. And it's the same thing on both sides. Is Mark Williams a little bit better on FanDuel? Yeah. He's 3% optimal, 6% owned. LaMelo's 7% optimal, 3% owned. No one for Charlotte made the top 30 on DraftKings or FanDuel. I do not believe that you guys should be playing anybody from the Hornets outside of LaMelo Ball or Mark Williams on FanDuel. They look terrible. This is unquestionably one of the worst teams you can get to. They are 2% owned in the aggregate on DraftKings. That is, oddly enough, tied for the second lowest owned team. One team actually has 1% ownership. So I am done with Charlotte. I have nothing else to add. This is not a team we are going to. And we do right now have a 2 OddsShopper rating, 2.4% EV, KCP under 13.5 PRA on Onyx odds. But we don't have anything on the Charlotte side. Let's go to game number 2. Not a ton here either. The San Antonio Spurs, not a ton here on FanDuel, I might add. The San Antonio Spurs, 9.5 point underdogs in Detroit, 235 total. By all accounts, we're going to have close to everybody for San Antonio. We do have one note. Stephon Castle is questionable. That will free up something. What that ends up being, I'm not entirely sure just yet. Julian Champagnie probably gets a bit of a benefit there. But we are getting quite a bit of ownership to San Antonio. We're going to start with the guy that's been chalk for the past few games. It's not changing today. 5,600, power forward center eligible, Jeremy Sohan, 30% owned. He's in 60% of my stuff. I am fully expecting to get to a bunch of Sohan once again, assuming they maintain what they were doing. Now, we don't know for sure. They started Biyombo last time out, but he only got the Bogans until it was over, and then he closed in the blowout. I'm still expecting a short amount of minutes for Biyombo. I gave him 12, basically just playing the beginning of the first and third quarter. Sohan soaking up the large majority of the rest of the center rotation. Mamu will obviously get some as well, depending on how you want to classify those guys. But it's Sohan. He ranks third. The value is there. The minutes have been there. I mean, even off the bench last game, like he only played 20 off the bench, but he also didn't close, and he would have been expected to close. The game was a complete and utter blowout. Nobody relevant played at the end. It was McLaughlin, Branham, Mamu, Wesley, and Biyombo actually in the close. So I would expect more minutes. Maybe Sohan's a little high here in playing time, and it should be 28 to 30. He's still going to look like a 30% owned guy. So maybe a little over projected to start the day. You're getting him no matter what. Keldon Johnson's 20% owned. I have nothing to add there. 4,600, 20% optimal, 20% of my lineups, ranks 12th. He's the second best guy you can get from San Antonio. And then it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Is it Chris Paul? Is it Devin Vassell? Is it Julian Champagnie? Paul and Vassell are both 10% owned on DraftKings. Champagnie only 5. I got more of Champagnie than I got of the other two guys. They're all about 10% optimal. Chris Paul ranks 25th, Champagnie 30th, Vassell 33rd. Not a ton of separation between those guys either. And I got basically the same amount of them. 11% of Vassell, 13 of Paul, 15 of Champagnie. Those guys are great lineup filler. Keldon Johnson definitely looks a little bit better. Sohan is clearly not on the same tier. There's a couple very likable options from San Antonio on DraftKings today. FanDuel is very different. It's only Sohan. And even that's probably a little too high. He's going to be 10 to 15% owned, 6,200 power forward only. But after that, everybody's single digit optimal, everybody's single digit ownership. These guys are not nearly as good on FanDuel as they are on DraftKings. It's mostly just Sohan and then like 5% of Champagnie, Keldon Johnson, or Vassell. But very light. Do we have any San Antonio Spurs bets? We do. 2 OddsShopper rating, 2.5% EV, over 4.5 rebounds for Devin Vassell on BetMGM. It's always fun to take an over when you get the opportunity. And that one is sitting out there right now. One of the two OddsShopper ratings. Gary likes Vassell. I don't blame you. I think Devin Vassell looks pretty damn good today. Terry Moses wants Blake Wesley. That's only Blake Wesley if Stephon Castle is out. Otherwise, do not play Blake Wesley. John C. says Mamu, but I know that he's lying, so I'll ignore that. Steven says Keldon. Yeah, that's the one right there, I think. Surprised the Magic are only 5-point favorites. What do I have the line at? Wait, did I say 5? Oh, the Orlando game. Yeah, oddly enough, Steven, I have it lower than that, but I'm not a big believer in Detroit. Detroit. Speaking of Detroit. They're on the opposite side, and they're not all that interesting. Now, they might be, because we have injury news here. Cade Cunningham, questionable. Tim Hardaway Jr., questionable. He's missed the past few. So if everybody's in, there's not a lot to like. Maybe a little bit of Dennis Schroeder off the bench at 4,700 because he's a decent per minute guy. maybe a little bit of Tobias Harris, but I don't think Cade looks great. He's fine at 10-5, but he ranks 50th. Tim Hardaway Jr. is not good to begin with. I didn't get much Jalen Duren. No one is getting more than 10% ownership. Only Schroeder got north of 10% optimal. That won't even be there by the time we get to lock. That'll come down. I don't think these guys are going to stand out. I wish they did. The total on this one's awesome. The matchup for Detroit's great. I think the most interesting way we get to Detroit is if Cade and or Tim Hardaway don't play. Because if Cade's gone, we're going to have a little bit of value on Detroit. If they're both gone, we're going to have a lot of value on Detroit. But we need to know that information. So this could go from a team that's not all that interesting to a team that's very interesting if we end up losing Cade. Because that's, 34 minutes. That's all the usage. That's giant assist rate changes. At that point, if Cade is out, Dennis Schroeder is going to become one of the more popular guys on the slate. Now, on the FanDuel side, it's basically the same scenario, only Malik Beasley looks a little bit better on FanDuel. 4,800, shooting guard, small forward eligible, 20% optimal, 17% owned, ranks 13th. But look at the ownership on the starters. Cade, 3, Tim Hardaway, 2, Asar, 2, Tobias Harris, 8, Jalen Duren, 8. There's not a lot here. Is Schroeder on both sites a little bit? And really not much else. Do you guys like anything on Detroit? At least as of right now. We don't have any Detroit bets, unfortunately. So nothing to recommend there. But yeah, this could look very, very, very... Juju has a torn ACL. Smith-Schuster? Is he even any good anymore? Anyway. Do you guys like anything here? Because I don't. Gary says Duren. He's just a guy. He's just a guy. He's 7,200. It's like, it's the same minutes all the time. I don't see it on Duren. Like, he's not gettable, but he's also not interesting. What's a Juju Watkins? Oh, Donnie, same response. If there's no Cade and Hardaway, Duren will be more than a guy. Why? What's he going to do in that scenario? Just get set up worse and have worse spacing? There will be a lot better things than Jalen Duren if Cade and Hardaway are out. Yeah, women's basketball. Never saw it. Never saw it. All right, we're through the first 2 games. Now we could have a little conversation about what I wanted to talk about. I'm going to drop the link in the description or in the chat right now. That's not the way that I want that link to show up. Remove. Let's try this again. Because you guys are going to want what I'm selling here. I reckon. Why is that not? There it is. All right, the link is in chat. And I'll show you why the link is in chat. We're running a promo, baby. Jimmy Butler is heading back to Miami. The Warriors are 4.5-point favorites in Miami with a 217 total. But we are giving out a 14-day free trial to the Portfolio EV tool. Promo code Jimmy. So I just dropped the link from my personal account into chat. It'll be in the description of this video. This is today only and probably for only like the next hour or 2. It's not going to last very long. We're only giving out a couple of these. 14-day free trial for the Portfolio EV tool. I've been showing it all show so far. Take a market-based approach to beating the books. Hey, there's a Steph Curry under 4.5 threes prop out there right now. Shop around. Get the best lines. Get an OddsShopper rating. Get the projected EV, your expected win rate. You have all of the line shopping. If that is something that you want to do, you can mass enter bets. We have a parlay builder, an odds boost calculator, and you can do all of these same things not just for sports books, but for pick'em sites as well. If you're on the pick'em side, you can go to the pick'em top bets section. It'll show you everything that we're looking at in terms of value at Prize Picks, Dabble, Better, Sleeper, Underdog. It's all here. Live odds screen. If you want to shop around, look through some trend data. Again, the promo code is Jimmy. Jimmy Butler working his way back to Miami with the Golden State Warriors. We want to celebrate Jimmy going back to Miami, and we want to celebrate it by giving you guys 14 days free of the Portfolio EV tool. I'm going to drop the link one more time into chat if possible. Apparently, no, but let me open it up one more time so that I could drop this into chat and you guys can sign up. Click that link, sign up, use the promo code Jimmy. You will get the Portfolio EV tool at OddsShopper.com for 14 days, no cost. If you hate it in those 14 days, cancel at any point in time. You're not going to pay us a cent. If not, I think you're going to want to stick around. Trey mentioned it before. The tool is crushing right now, guys. The tool is crushing. Again, this promo code is not going to last long. If you're watching this at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's probably gone. If you're watching right now, you want to take advantage, it's not going to last past noon. So know that. Speaking of the Warriors, they look awful. Not a single person ranked in the top 40. The highest ranked guy is Jonathan Kuminga. Conceivably, this could change. Steph Curry's questionable. This could look a little bit different by the time we get to lock. But if Steph's in, I don't know, maybe a little bit of Draymond and a little bit of Kuminga. Apologies to Jimmy Butler, but $8,700 Jimmy Butler just does not look good today. Not a single guy in the top 30. Not a single guy in the top 40 for Golden State. Low total, second lowest on the slate, second slowest game on the slate. Unfortunately for me, I don't think I'm going to play much of Golden State. I got 3% of Draymond, 4% of Kuminga, and nothing else. Now, if Steph ends up out, maybe we look at Pods. Maybe we look at Buddy Hield. Maybe we look at Gary Payton or Guy Santos. But only Kuminga and Draymond got an optimal that wasn't 0. I just don't see anything here for Golden State. And it's not all that different on on FanDuel. Draymond's 10% owned. Kuminga's just shy of 10% owned. They're 8 and 11% optimal. Steph's a little bit better on FanDuel where he's only 8,400, 6% optimal, 4% owned, but there's just nothing here. There's just nothing here. This is a bad spot. Miami's defense is solid, especially now with Wiggins and the two bigs. Like that's tough sledding. It's a very bad game environment for DFS. So I don't really recommend much of anything from Golden State. It's very unlikely that they are going to be in a lot of my lineups. That Steph prop under 4.5 threes is actually the number one play right now in the Portfolio EV tool, and it's gone. Disappeared that quickly. That's how quick you got to move sometimes. But nothing else here for Golden State. Moses Moody at 1.3% on under 11.5 points on DraftKings. But for DFS purposes, I will not be playing all that much of the Golden State Warriors. I'll probably be playing a little bit more of the Miami Heat, though. So Bam's available, Hero's available. The injury news that we're waiting on for Miami, questionable, Duncan Robinson. But we've got Bam Adebayo ranked 11th, 20% optimal, 20% owned, 8,200 with the power forward center eligibility. Khalil Ware is 5,500. He's seen some extra minutes as of late, 15% optimal, 15% owned. Both guys rank in the top 15. Wiggins is getting a little bit more than 10% ownership. He's over 10% optimal, 6,300, small forward, power forward eligible. He looks better. Tyler Hero is completely reasonable at 8,300, point guard only, 6% owned. So I like a lot of Miami. Decent chunk of ownership. Happy to match the field on these guys. This is a much better spot for Miami than it is for Golden State. And that's the DraftKings side. The FanDuel side, slightly different, but also slightly better. Bam is 25% owned. He ranks 12th. 8,300 power forward center eligibility. He's 22% optimal. Looking really good. on the FanDuel side. And then Tyler Hero is a little bit more popular on FanDuel. 10% owned, 15% optimal, 8,300 point guard, shooting guard eligibility. But Wiggins isn't as interesting on FanDuel. Khalil Ware is much less interesting on FanDuel. It's really Hero and Bam on the FanDuel side. It's a bit more ownership on the DraftKings side. Unfortunately, no Miami bets right now. So not super helpful for us. Not a single thing showing up north of 1. What do you guys like for Miami here? Top 5 in competitive spirit. How are we measuring that, man? Competitive spirit. What a not thing. Yeah, Ware does look good. 5,500 center only could play 30 minutes, depending on how the game's going. Solid per minute, dude. 1.1 fantasy points per minute. But I'm digging Ware. I'm digging Bam. Yeah, I feel a lot more comfortable playing Khalil Ware than I do Jalen Duren. Completely agree there, Steven. Wiggins revenge. I don't think Andrew Wiggins is going to be all that mad. That guy got to move from the poop-covered streets of San Francisco to the beaches of Miami. And he has he won NBA titles. Yeah, I think he's plenty happy. Let's go to game 4. The Dallas Mavericks are 9.5 point underdogs in New York, 225 total. And as you can see, there's no ownership or interest coming into Dallas. 1% ownership to Dinwiddie, 1 to PJ Washington, 1% optimal to Dinwiddie, Clay, PJ, and Najee. Obviously, we're not expecting Anthony Davis to be playing in this game. Came back yesterday. I have no idea how he'd be playing a back-to-back, so let's just assume he's not. San Francisco is not covered in poop. I mean, it's got a lot of poop. It's got a lot of poop. The San Francisco that I experienced 10 to 15 years ago does not look like the San Francisco of today. Are you guys going to play anybody from Dallas? Because obviously the highest ranked guy is PJ Washington at 72nd. On FanDuel, they're a hair better. I think you can get to Najee Marshall or Klay Thompson or PJ Washington slightly more. But this is one of the worst teams you could get to. Gary Bailey wants Dinwiddie. Not interested at all. John Bush says Jones. Not interested at all. These guys are both terrible. Dinwiddie's too expensive. I don't care if he's getting the minutes. He ranks 85th. Kai Jones ranks 115th on DraftKings at 5,100. He's a bad per minute guy. Look, I got 1 share of Dinwiddie and 1 share of Clay, and I could argue that's too much. Ooh. 3% EV, 4 OddsShopper rating on ESPN for Najee Marshall under 6.5 rebounds. I'm not going to take the points and assists prop as that has a pretty sizable negative historical ROI. But we do have Najee Marshall under 6.5 rebounds with a 4 OddsShopper rating on ESPN. That would be one I would want to run to very quickly. Now, as bad as the Dallas side looks, the Knicks side is going to be slightly different because Jalen Brunson is out. And more importantly, Miles McBride is out. And with no Brunson and no Miles McBride, we saw this recipe in the last Knicks game. And we got 30 minutes at a campaign. I got him in for 28 today. He is 4,600, point guard, shooting guard eligible, and the number 1 play of the day, 75% optimal, 75% owned, 75% of my lineups. Campaign is the number one play on DraftKings today. Not even close. However, Towns at 10K looks incredible. Don't think he's going to have a lot of resistance from Kai Jones or from Dwight Powell. And there's no Brunson. So 1.5 fantasy points per minute. I got 40% of him. He's 30% optimal, 30% owned. Karl Anthony Towns ranks 4th. 2 major priorities, 2 cash game locks. And there's still 10% ownership coming into Bridges and Hart, a little bit more to Anunoby. Those 3 guys are all totally fine to get to. I think Hart looks the best, but Campaign and Karl Anthony Towns, high-level priorities on the DraftKings side. And somehow Campaign's even better on FanDuel. Point guard, shooting guard eligible, 4,100, 90% optimal, 90% owned, ranks number 1. Is he going to be 90% owned or 90% optimal? No. That's just math for the morning. But what it is telling you is that Campaign is very clearly the number 1 play. But you're getting 10 to 15% ownership on Bridges, Hart, and Anunoby. Again, I would take Hart over those other 2 guys, but they all look good. Towns is 9,800 on FanDuel. 5x value, 20% optimal, 20% owned, ranks 11th. Look, with no Brunson and no Miles McBride, we have a lot of value for New York. I don't know how you dodge these guys. Dallas sucks. It's a lot of the Knicks. But Campaign is your number 1 play on both sites. Not even close. Don't even know how he would get usurped from that role. We would have to get some really weird injury news later. And then Towns just gets such a benefit because he's the overwhelming best player on the team right now. What do you guys like here from the Knicks? Obviously Campaign, but like, what do you want to do with the rest of these guys? There's nothing to say about Campaign other than play him. Not to mention, we're also waiting on a Q tag for Mitchell Robinson. Not that I think that it's going to matter all that much, but just putting that out there because he is questionable. I don't understand how Elfrid Payton can't keep a job because he sucks. I think it's mostly just because he's really not good at basketball. But, I could be wrong. I mean, he might actually be the worst player in the league. So I'm guessing that's probably why he can't keep a job. Being utterly atrocious at basketball. Yeah, that's just a guess. I could be incorrect. Click Cam and move on. I like Towns. I want to see the ownership. Agree, Steven. Hart. Dustin Wittenberg. On the season, Elfrid Payton has a 37% true shooting. That is first percentile. You can't be worse. He's shooting 39% at the rim. He has not made a 3. Last season, same scenario. 39.7% true shooting in 50 games. First percentile. Couldn't be any worse. 44% at the rim. First percentile. Couldn't be any worse. He is one of the worst offensive players in basketball. You could argue that he's the worst. Elfrid Payton, of everybody projected in dunks and threes, has the lowest offensive EPM of anybody. 0 percentile. There is no player on dunks and threes that projects to be a worse offensive player than Elfrid Payton. And our question is, why doesn't he get a job? I think we figured it out. Coming from the guy that said Nurkic is going to keep his job in Phoenix. If I said that, I don't know why I said it. I assume they'd keep his job because he's the best center they had. Dishing 10 to 25 assists every time he touches the court. Yeah, where's that getting him? You know who sucks at shooting and can't keep a job? Chris Paul. Okay, I'll bite. Chris Paul. Projecting with a league average true shooting, plus 1.3 offensive EPM, shoots 77th percentile from 3. Dustin, I'm going to go ahead and ignore you now, brother. But I think we found Elfrid Payton's burner. Play the Knicks, guys. Play the Knicks. Campaign, Karl Towns, Josh Hart. Get some Bridges. Get some Anunoby. We move on to the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks are 8-point dogs in Houston. 234 total. Nice total here. Tough matchup for Atlanta. We do have to talk a little bit about the Hawks. Everybody that's normally available is available, which is kind of fun. They're also getting no ownership, and I don't really think they should. Okongwu got to 9% optimal. That's the highest of anybody for the Hawks. He's 5% owned. That's the highest of anybody for the Hawks. I got some Okongwu, 5% of Daniels, 5% of Risa. No Trae Young. Steven, how is that guy not just constantly playing for guys? That seems good, right? It's like golf. The bigger the negative number, the better. Am I understanding correctly? Don't think so. Like, Okongwu's in the top 30. I'm not super excited, but 5 to 10% is fine. I just don't want these guys against Houston. There's a reason these guys are all highlighted in white. None of them look all that good. Little bit of Okongwu, little bit of Daniels, little bit of Risa. Go on your merry way. Kind of the same situation for FanDuel. Now, Daniels and Okongwu are slightly more optimal on the FanDuel end. Daniels obviously has a much better scoring system on FanDuel. Okongwu has power forward eligibility. That's really helpful. So those guys do look a little bit better on the FanDuel end, but the next highest owned guy is Karis LeVert at 4. I just don't think you're getting to a lot of the Hawks here. You can get fraudulent defensive player of the year candidate Dyson Daniels if you want it. I shouldn't be mean because he is good, but he should not win that award. I mean, at least Draymond is more deserving of defensive player of the year than Dyson Daniels, but Evan Mobley, not so much. We do have a Bridges bet on ESPN now. Slightly negative historical ROI, but under 4.5 assists at even money is a 3 OddsShopper rating. Towns has a 2% EV, under 1.5 threes made at plus 140. That scares the shit out of me, but it's a decent bet. Nothing crazy out there right now. Yes, fraudulent. I am not a believer in perimeter guys winning Defensive Player of the Year. Yes, I absolutely 100% think Draymond is a better defender than Dyson Daniels. So does the world, because he's about to get the Defensive Player of the Year award. Again. But yes, Draymond is better than Dyson Daniels defensively. Dyson Daniels is good. One of the better perimeter defenders. I don't value that as highly as I value rim protection. Any thoughts on Kolek? I don't really think he's playable. In theory, he could get more minutes, but I just don't expect them. Clanton, yeah, Draymond's the favorite. Let's look at Houston. So Houston has locked their rotation down. They're only playing 8 guys every night. So Marcus Smart didn't deserve his? No, he didn't. That was a travesty. No injury news for Houston. So they're playing 8 dudes. Well, if he's their entire defense, I'd love to know why the defense is worse when he's off the floor. It's just steals, guys. Look, he's a good on-ball defender, but that's not as valuable as people think it is, especially in the regular season. So we're getting some ownership to Alperen Şengün. He ranks 6th on DraftKings, 9K, center only, 1.5 fantasy points per minute, 30% optimal, 20% owned. He's going to look good. He's going to be 20 to 30% owned all day. And I like it. I got 38% of Alperen Şengün. That's a big stand. Probably one of my more exposed guys that aren't like broken price dudes. Tari Eason's interesting but scary. Minutes were down lately, especially now with Amin Thompson back. But still 5,700, 1.1 fantasy points per minute. Ranks 18th. I got 14%. And then Van Vliet at 6,200. The minutes are back. Playing 34, 35 minutes a night. He's a fantasy point per minute guy in this matchup. Facing Atlanta helps. 13% owned, 17% optimal. You can get a couple shares of Jalen Green, get a couple shares of Dillon Brooks. I'm not all that enamored with Amin Thompson at 8,200. Good eligibility, but just does not rank all that well. I think you could roll the dice on Steven Adams. I just don't think it's probably all that necessary for today. No, Talis, I probably said that incorrectly. Like in his perspective. So I misspoke the way that I said that. So with Dyson Daniels on the floor, Atlanta's defensive rating actually goes up 1.2 points to a 116 defensive rating. If we want to do this, Draymond, when he is on the floor, 111 defensive rating for Golden State. That is obviously really, really good. 5 points better when Draymond is on the floor than when Dyson Daniels is on the floor. That's not the only thing I look at, but I do like to know if these guys can anchor a good defense, and 5 points is a lot. Dyson Daniels, confirmed good defensively, but not a defensive player of the year. FanDuel side of Houston, kind of the same thing, but a little bit different on the priorities. Şengün, still great on FanDuel at 9,100. Ranked 6th, 18% owned. Anthony Davis, Tari Eason will not be starting. He's not a starter at all now. Dillon Brooks is actually the most interesting guy on FanDuel for Houston. 4,900, shooting guard, small forward eligible. He's not the best per minute guy, but the flexibility in the minutes are great because these guys have been playing a little bit more now. 27% ownership, 20% optimal for Dillon Brooks. Much better on the FanDuel side. And then Jalen Green got to 13% ownership, 13% optimal, ranks 21st. Tari Eason still getting some love, ranks 20th. So Houston looks good, but Van Vliet goes from really interesting on DraftKings to 7K and less interesting on FanDuel. But the one takeaway here seems to be Amin Thompson not grading out all that well. In terms of Houston bets, we do not have any as of right now. So nothing to grab there. Nothing to grab there. So that's Houston. Now we go to Memphis. Before we go to Memphis, we do have to talk MLB DFS. The promo's still going on, folks. The baseball season is kicking off in full swing on Thursday. You can get any MLB DFS package for $1 through April 3rd. Whichever package you choose, weekly or monthly. After April 3rd, it's going to re-up for whichever you choose. So $1, promo code CYCLE will get you projections, ownership, top stacks, top pitchers, top batters. It'll get you our single lineup sim, our contest generator, our regular sims, our post-contest sims. Premium Discord as well. If you want to get in for MLB DFS is probably the most fun DFS because you could roster a shit team stack and they can be the highest scorers on the slate. It's very different than basketball. A lot more fun to sweat. And you can come in for promo code CYCLE, $1 through April 3rd. Link in the description. Trevor, that's not what we compared. That's not what we compared on. I want to know what they do when they're on. And it's a 5-point gap. Raw plus minus, looking at off, is useless. Because that doesn't control for if your bench is good or bad. What you do while you're on is important to me. Guys, they were starting fucking Quentin Post at center. Steph is the point guard. Like, yes, I agree. Golden State is probably a better defensive team. Look, none of this matters. None of this matters. Draymond Green is unequivocally a better defensive player than Dyson Daniels. That's just the conversation, regardless of whatever I'm saying for stats. The bigger you are, the better you are at defense. By default, size matters. Memphis Grizzlies. 10-point favorites in Utah. No Brandon Clark, no Ja Morant. Lamar Stevens is doubtful. We're getting some love here for Memphis. 3 guys in the top 10 on DraftKings. Scottie Pippen ranking second, 27.5 minutes, 5K, 1.15 fantasy points per minute. 65% owned, 55% optimal. Is it going to be this high by the time we get to lock? Probably not. I expect it to come down. Is he going to be one of the highest owned guys in a cash game play? 100% yes. He looks incredible here against Utah. They're terrible. But we don't stop there. Triple J, 7,800, power forward center eligible, 1.35 fantasy points per minute. He ranks 10th. He's 20% optimal, 24% owned. He's in 25% of my lineups. So I got a bunch of Pippen, a bunch of Jackson. Vince Williams is 30% owned today. He's 3,500, shooting guard, small forward eligible. He played 23 minutes last time out. We got him in for 22 today because they're shorthanded. They're missing some bodies. Little scary, but nothing crazy to me. But he ranks 5th. It's really solid value. I got a couple shares of Jalen Wells, a couple shares of Zach Edey, a couple shares of Luke Kennard, a couple shares of Desmond Bane. There is a lot to like here for Memphis against Utah. The matchup is perfect. This game has the highest total. They're shorthanded, so some of these guys look better. There's a lot here for Memphis. What do you guys like from the Grizz? Because on FanDuel, it's the same situation. Scottie Pippen is heavily owned, 40% optimal. Desmond Bane is actually a play on FanDuel. 40% ownership for Desmond Bane on FanDuel, 8,400. Shooting guard, small forward eligible, north of 20% optimal, ranks 10th. Aldama's 40% owned on FanDuel, 5,800, 40% optimal. He ranks 4th. Triple J's in the top 20. Vince Williams is in the top 20. Luke Kennard is getting north of 10% ownership. Memphis is a priority today. DraftKings, FanDuel, either way. Does it depend a little bit on which site for which guy? Yeah. Like Desmond Bane is 8,900 with just shooting guard eligibility on DraftKings. It's a completely different play at $500 cheaper with an MPE. What do you guys want the most here from Memphis? Terry Moses says Pippen. Yeah, agreed. A high-level priority on both sites. 27 minutes last time out, 31 the game before that, 29 the game before that. We have him in for 27.5, so conceivably, he can get 3 more minutes here, too. Gary likes Triple J. Put Daniels in Draymond's spot and watch his stats go ballistic. He'd play 18 minutes a game. He's so bad offensively, they'd rip him off the floor. They already have a Dyson Daniels. His name's Gary Payton. They play him 18 minutes a game. Bane 50 piece? You need more than 50 for Bane, unless you mean real points. But whether it's Pippen, Aldama, Jackson, Vince Williams, they would have to turn him into a shooter. You can't turn him into a shooter. He's one of the worst shooters in the league. It's the reason he's not on the Pelicans any longer. He takes 3 threes a game. No one guards him. It'd be worse than if Draymond were out there. All the Memphis in the world. Now, Utah. Obviously, they're missing guys. Jordan Clarkson is questionable. John Collins is out. Lauri Markkanen is out. We are getting a little bit of ownership to 2 top 20 guys. Walker Kessler at 7,100. Center only 7,100. 1.2 fantasy points per minute. 13% optimal, only 7% owned. And then Keontae George, 30 minutes, 6,100. 1 fantasy point per minute. ranks 19th. He's 15% owned. Ernie. The promo code Jimmy for OddsShopper Portfolio EV will be a 14-day free trial. Normally, you can get a 7-day free trial. We're running 14 on the Jimmy promo. But like, you want to get a little Colin Sexton, okay. But I don't want really anything here. No real interest in Collier, Williams, Filipowski, Jordan Clarkson. No. It's Kessler and George and a little bit of Sexton, at least on the DraftKings end. And then for FanDuel, it's Kessler and George. Kessler got to 9th, 20% optimal, 15% owned at 7K. Keontae George is 6,300. He's 14% owned. But Colin Sexton got to 5% optimal. Everybody else is 1 or below. So it's the same thing on both sites, DraftKings or FanDuel. Kessler, George, and a little bit of Colin Sexton. Otherwise, nothing. Any bets for Utah? Walker Kessler, under 22.5 PRA. 1 OddsShopper rating, 1.8% EV on BetMGM. That's all we have for Utah right now, unfortunately. Two to go. Cleveland Cavaliers, 6.5 point favorites in Portland. 230 total. No Donovan Mitchell for this one. He's already out today for rest purposes. We are getting a bit of ownership. The most of which is technically coming into Ty Jerome. Point guard only, 4,400. 16% optimal, 20% owned. Showed up in 27% of my lineups. Really solid value for right now in 23 minutes. Garland is the highest ranked guy. 25+% optimal, ranks 7th, 17% owned. I got 28%. He's 8K point guard only with no Donovan Mitchell. Don't have much interest in Isaac Okoro or Max Strus. I think Mobley is fine at 8,500, 10% optimal, 10% owned. But you're really not getting much. I think it's Garland, Jerome, Mobley, maybe a little bit of DeAndre Hunter at 5K. But like Okoro and Strus just aren't good enough per minute. There's not enough minutes for everybody else. Allen is whatever today. FanDuel, kind of the same situation. Ty Jerome is not nearly as interesting on FanDuel because he's 5,400. Darius Garland is more interesting on FanDuel. He ranks 2nd. He's 7,700. That's $300 cheaper than he is on DraftKings. 40+% optimal. Big time priority Darius Garland on the FanDuel end. Mobley's a little less interesting at 9K, but still a 10%er. Allen is actually more interesting on FanDuel because he has power forward eligibility. So if I'm ranking these guys on the FanDuel end, it's Garland, Hunter, Mobley. If I'm ranking them on the DraftKings side, it's Garland, Jerome, Mobley. Any bets for Cleveland? Nah. Garland, under 7.5 assists is at 1.4% EV. Mobley, under 32.5 PRA is at 1 OddsShopper rating. So nothing major. But yeah, no Donovan Mitchell. Certainly makes Cleveland look a little bit more interesting today. And then on the Portland side, these guys continue to be missing people. Banton, questionable. Jeremy Grant, doubtful. The guy that's getting the most ownership is the guy that's been going crazy. Small forward, power forward eligible, Denny Avdia, 7,700. 5.2x value, 1.15 fantasy points per minute. Ranks with a 23% optimal. Ranks 8th overall. 28% owned. Now, I'm a little under the field, but still. Denny Avdia is a top 10 play today. Anthony Simons looks fine at 6,400. He's in the top 30. He's 10% owned. And I think you can get shares of Shaden Sharp, Tumani Kamara, or Donovan Clingan. They're just not priorities. Denny Avdia is the guy you want the most here. That's the guy you want the most. Now, on FanDuel, you don't really want anything. No one has higher than a 7% optimal. No one has higher than 8% ownership. The highest ranked guy is Denny Avdia at 37th, but he's 8,400. The pricing on Portland is problematic. No one in the top 30. Not a single guy that I would go out of my way to get to. Any Portland bets? Nah, nothing for Portland. 1.1% EV under, hiccups. Under 12.5 points for Tumani Kamara on Fanatics. So we reached the final game of the night. The Oklahoma City Thunder, 10-point favorites in Sacramento, 231 total. And you guys can quickly see on DraftKings, we will not be playing anything from OKC if everything holds. But Chet is questionable. Jalen Williams is questionable. No one got more than 4% optimal. No one got more than 3% ownership. I didn't get more than 1% of any of these guys. I'm not going to be getting to much of Oklahoma City. Now, if Chet ends up out and Jalen Williams ends up out, then yeah, we probably find a little bit of value here for the Thunder, especially against Sacramento. But as of right now, there's nothing. FanDuel, a little tiny bit of Jalen Williams is okay. 10% optimal, 10% owned, ranks 22nd. Everybody else is the same. Terrible optimal rates, terrible ownership. We will not be going to the Oklahoma City Thunder for any sort of volume today, unless we get Chet and Jalen Williams out. Now, OKC props do not exist. Do not exist right now. So we get to the final team. We've been able to zip through these final couple teams. Sacramento looks terrible. Completely unowned. The lowest owned team on DraftKings. Now they're on a back-to-back, so we don't really know who's available. But if they're at full strength, we will not be playing much of Sacramento. 1% ownership to Sabonis, 1% optimal to Sabonis. The only guys that aren't on zero. I didn't get a single share of Sacramento. You play a little bit more DeRozan on FanDuel, but the highest optimal rate on the FanDuel side is 3%. Sacramento, draw a line straight through them. The lowest owned team on DraftKings right now. But we don't have their injury report. So it's possible something changes, but for right now, we don't have it. 8 games up, 8 games down, which means it's time for the czar to build a DraftKings lineup and a FanDuel lineup before I send you guys out of here. Let's see what we can get built on DK. Hit that like button if you haven't done it yet, guys. That will help out a ton. All right, we're going Anthony Black. We're going Ty Jerome. Alperen Şengün. Shit, I can't play Fred VanVleet. Ooh. All right, Ty Jerome out, VanVleet in. Sohan in. Now I need a shooting guard. Ooh, I really don't like these shooting guards. Let's get Anthony Simons. Small forward. I'm going to get Jalen Wells and see if I could spend up elsewhere. Regular forward can be Keldon Johnson. And now I have 10-7 to spend up at utility, which can be Towns. Leaving 700 on the table is unappealing. Can I get better than Jalen Wells if I do that? I can. I can get Vince Williams instead. Although I'd rather have the ownership discount. So I'll keep Jalen Wells. Can I upgrade Anthony Black at point guard? Anthony Black can become Ty Jerome and spend some salary. Let's see what we get here. Let's say 67.9. 0.3. All right, back to the drawing board. Let's try this again. Okay. Well, I reckon I'm going to have to get Campaign and Scottie Pippen in there. I think that was my biggest issue. At which point, now I'll take Anthony. Now that pinches me for guard. So now we'll get Keldon Johnson, small forward. I'll get Alperen Şengün again. I'm going to get Fred VanVleet. Power forward allows me to get Sohan. Forward. Now I have enough money to legitimately spend here. So we'll get Wiggins. And then I have 8,700 at utility to grab Evan Mobley. This one has to be better. Let's say 44.8. And I will consider that a win. 60. There we go. There we go. We're back in business. I left too many fantasy points on the table first draft. All right. 60 on the dot for DraftKings. Let's see how we do on FanDuel, which we knocked out of the park yesterday. So FanDuel. I reckon we're going to get Campaign. We're going to get Santi Aldama. We're going to get Walker Kessler. We're going to get Vince Williams. We're going to get Darius Garland. Malik Beasley. Dylan Brooks. Anthony Black. Now I have infinite salary left, which is great. We can get Franz in there. And now I have 8,800 left to spend. Just out of curiosity, how bad is this lineup if I leave 8,800 on the table? Because obviously it's awful. I mean, we're leaving probably 35 fantasy points on the table. This is going to be like negative 80. Yeah, negative 97. So let's figure out where we can upgrade this lineup best. First spot is pretty clearly, to me, Vince Williams. So while he might be the great value, we could discount a little bit of that and get to Desmond Bane. The next guy I would want to upgrade, it's probably Malik Beasley. And that can become Josh Hart. And I think it might actually be Anthony Black. What can I get at shooting guard? Actually, in this spot now, I'm actually going to go back to Vince Williams. And then... is it Dylan Brooks that I upgrade? It is. Let's get Clay. Now I have 1,100 left. Maybe that Walker Kessler just becomes... now it stays as Walker Kessler. I mean, I guess I could make it Duran, but that's not really helping me. Is it Aldama? Can't be. No, it's not Aldama. Where's the upgrade here? It can't be Garland. No. I don't know where the natural upgrade spot is here now. Maybe it's not Vince Williams. Let's see what we get here. 52.7. $19. Yeah, we could do better than that. I'm going to try this again. Final time, and then you guys are going to go say hi to Eitan. I think you know what? I'm going to try to do it without Campaign. So let's get Aldama. Let's get Scottie Pippen. Let's get Alperen Şengün. Let's get Vince Williams. Let's get Garland. Let's get Beasley. Let's get Dylan Brooks again. Small forward and power forward. Let's get Franz. And let's get Bam. 71-7. This is how we end it. Stick the landing. Wow. Okay, so that lets me know that Campaign is important. So if I put Campaign in now and I could upgrade a little bit. Let's get to Mikal Bridges. Does that change it? Because that was awful. That one was awful. I think I'm taking on too much ownership here. This is going to be the final one either way. Can we get into the positive? 47-1. We'll take it. That concludes the NBA Strategy Show, guys. Thank you for being here. Don't forget, the promo code is Jimmy for a 14-day free trial of the OddsShopper Portfolio EV tool. The promo code is CYCLE, $1 for the MLB DFS package through April 3rd. Have a good one, guys. Keep your eyes peeled for the updates later today, and go tell Aton we said hi.